Well, it sounds hard to believe today, but many American cities once had what were called ugly laws, which banned anyone in any way deformed, so as to be an unsightly or creepy object, from being in public view. Back then, freak shows weren't just allowed, they were proudly advertised. Some of the people involved were deceived, others pushed into it, and many had no say at all. So join us as we look at the 15 unbelievable circus freaks that actually existed. Number 15. Joyce Heth. Joyce Heth was the woman who launched P.T. Barnum's career into the spotlight. In the 1830s, Barnum purchased her for $1,000 after receiving a letter from fellow showman R.W. Lindsay, claiming Joyce was 161 years old and had once nursed George Washington. Blind, frail, and with sunken features, she embodied the myth perfectly. Barnum paraded her through East Coast towns, tiny inns, museums, and concert halls, selling the fantasy. Newspapers even speculated she wasn't human at all, but an automaton. In truth, she was only around 80 when she died in 1836. But Barnum wasn't finished. He held a public autopsy attended by over 1,500 paying spectators. Even after the lie unraveled, the audience returned. Joyce had been enslaved, displayed, and deceived. But she drew crowds until the very end. For Barnum, spectacle trumped morality. For Joyce, history barely recorded her name beyond the trick. Her story isn't just exploitation. It's a brutal reminder of how easily humanity gets erased for profit. Number 14. Petrus Gonzalis. Petrus Gonzalis was born in the 16th century with hypertrichosis, a bizarre genetic condition that blanketed his face and body in thick hair. Mistaken for a beast, he was caged and sent to King Henry II's court like a wild animal. There, physicians discovered the truth. He was just a boy, fully human, just very hairy. Rather than being tossed aside, he was raised among French aristocrats and educated in Latin, court etiquette, and military theory. As a man, he married a woman named Catherine, who nervously wondered if their kids would inherit his condition. Of 7 children, 4 were just as hairy. The press dubbed them the Hairy Family, and they toured elite courts as both nobles and novelties. Though treated politely, they were rarely seen as equals. Their portraits circulated widely, adding fuel to rumor and legend. And while Beauty and the Beast may predate Petrus, his life was very real, and far stranger than any fairy tale. Number 13. Maurice Tillet. Well, now this is simply unbelievable. Maurice Tillet had a quiet childhood until, at 17, he was diagnosed with acromegaly, a disorder causing abnormal bone growth. His once average build transformed quickly. But Maurice didn't hide. He moved from France to America and became the French Angel, a pro wrestler who dominated the ring. Towering, heavy-jawed, and nearly unbeatable, Maurice became a wrestling icon and household name. He won the American Wrestling Association World Heavyweight title and drew crowds who admired more than just his physique. Off stage, he was thoughtful, multilingual, deeply spiritual, and even dabbled in poetry. Despite enduring constant pain and medical issues, he never made them the focus. Before his death in 1954, life masks were made of his face. Some say those features inspired the look of Shrek. Whether that's true or not, Maurice left a legacy that stretched far beyond sideshow fascination. He wasn't a freak. He was a champion who used his body as both armor and art. Number 12. Ramparad. Lalu entered the freak show with something few could ignore, a parasitic twin fused to his chest. This incomplete sibling with limbs and genitals intact but no head was dressed as his sister during performances to spike audience curiosity. Though he was Muslim, people often billed him as a jovial Hindu to feed Western stereotypes. In 1888, a British promoter took him to Europe. By 1891, he'd reached America, performing with Barnum and Bailey and the Ringling Brothers. His unique condition drew attention quickly, making him a staple in major circuses. In 1905, Lelou died tragically in a train accident while en route to Mexico with Norris and Rowe. Despite relentless sensationalism, Lelou's case remained one of the most striking biological rarities ever shown. He wasn't just a ticket seller, he was an uncomfortable but unforgettable lesson in human biology. His life wasn't just a sideshow, it was a rare confrontation with nature's unpredictability. Number 11. Alberta Carus. Alberta Carus, known on stage as Adam and Eve, became a standout in the 1920s circus culture. Believed to be either intersex or a skilled female impersonator named Harry Caro, Carus gained notoriety for a bold visual act. Posters often showed Carus split vertically, one half dressed in masculine fashion, the other in full femininity, turning gender ambiguity into a full spectacle. This was at a time when androgyny wasn't just controversial, it was ticket-worthy. Carus toured with showman Bobby Reynolds and headlined famous venues like Hubert's Museum in Times Square and the Lowe's Circuit. One promotional handout measured 11 by 17 inches, folding neatly into an 8.5 by 11-inch pamphlet with a split gender photo and short bio. While much about Carus was exaggerated by promoters, the act stood out for its mystery and nerve. No one's quite sure where fact ended and persona began. But Alberta's presence pushed buttons, blurred lines, and made people stare. And that's exactly what sideshows were built for. Number 10. The Elephant Girl. Sylvia Portorus, aka the Elephant Girl, rose to sideshow fame in the 1940s America due to elephantiasis, a rare disorder that dramatically deformed her feet. Archival images show her composed, even gently smiling, as crowds fixated on her swollen limbs. Her right foot was significantly larger than her left, giving her a slow, heavy limp that only amplified public curiosity. Before every show, Sylvia would explain her condition in calm detail, always closing with, "It's God's will, and there's nothing I can do about it." That line, delivered with calm poise, earned a kind of respect not often afforded in that era. Unlike many forced under the spotlight, Sylvia chose it, touring widely with traveling shows. She never flinched beneath the gaze. She stood tall in it. Her presence was serene but commanding. Sylvia wasn't a sideshow act. She was a woman with poise, grit, and backbone. What she left behind wasn't any freakish, but a legacy. Number 9. George Lippard. George, born in 1844, had one of the strangest anatomies ever recorded: 3 legs and 2 functioning hearts. His third leg, attached at the hip, was fully formed but mostly unusable. Lippard claimed doctors confirmed both hearts, though not everyone believed him. He entered show business in the 1860s, performing as the 3-legged man in dime museums and with major circuses across Europe and the US. What drew crowds wasn't just his physical anomaly, but his calm charm and polished manner. He talked openly about his condition, without drama or exaggeration. As freak shows got flashier, Lippard's fame faded. Late in life, he lost his extra leg to gangrene and died in poverty in 1906, buried quietly, with little ceremony. Despite the tragic end, his condition remains one of the rarest on record. And while many performers chased shock value, Lippard proved that quiet authenticity could hold just as much power in the spotlight. Number 8. Jean Libera. Born in Rome in 1884, Jean Libera became known as the man with the parasitic twin. Growing from his chest was the partial body of his conjoined twin, complete with a tiny, twisted face, a stubby arm, and a warped torso. Though lifeless, the malformed twin had disturbingly human features that unsettled everyone who saw it. John's rare condition, parasitic twinning, made him both a biological riddle and a crowd puller. But John never viewed himself as monstrous. Always dressed to the nines and calm in demeanor, he embraced public life without shame. He worked with major circuses across Europe and later in the US, attracting stares without needing any over-the-top act. While doctors pushed to study him more closely, Gene consistently refused, protecting his boundaries above all else. Not much survives about his personal life, but in sideshow history, his image endures. Equal parts spectacle and gentleman, Gene Libera embodied the fine line between fascination and human dignity. Number 7. Horus Riddler. Horus, better known as the Great Omi, didn't stumble into circus life. He built it, stripe by stripe. Once a British aristocrat, Riddler chose to transform his body into living art. He endured hundreds of tattoo sessions, covering himself in bold black and white zebra patterns. But he didn't stop there. He stretched his ears, added facial piercings, and leaned into tribal-style jewelry with full theatrical flair. His backstory? Entire fiction. He claimed to be a tribal captive forcibly tattooed, but in truth every inch was his idea. On stage, he wore sweeping robes, spoke in crisp upper-class English, and spun wild tales about ritual scarification. He wasn't a passive oddity. He was a performance machine. Riddler packaged curiosity, spectacle, and persona into a brand long before influencers existed. While others were born into sideshows, he built his. His image saturated posters and papers, and that manufactured mystique is still unforgettable. Number 6. Jonathan R. Bass. Jonathan Bass belonged to a grim category rarely discussed: the ossified men, individuals whose bodies turned rigid, nearly fossilized. Since childhood, he battled intense rheumatism. Still, he farmed in upstate New York into his 50s. But eventually, his joints locked entirely, and cataracts robbed him of sight. With no family left, he turned to the sideshow circuit to survive. Visitors paid to see him strapped upright on a wooden board, thin, silent, unmoving, his body stuck in time. He weighed just 75 pounds, kept alive by a liquid-only diet. Yet, in those final years, he clung to an odd optimism. Despite the discomfort of display, Bass's willpower left a deeper mark than his condition. He passed away from pneumonia in 1892. Many recoiled at his appearance, but the quiet defiance he carried stuck with them. In a world that froze his frame, Bass refused to freeze his spirit. Even rigid as stone, the man never crumbled. Now, let's move to number 5. Cuckoo, the bird girl. Minnie Woolsey, born in Georgia in 1880, became known as Cuckoo the Bird Girl. Diagnosed with Seckle syndrome, she had a tiny head, wide-set eyes, a pointed nose, and a thin, fragile frame. Her looks turned heads, but her performance sealed her legend. Dressed in feather-covered costumes and a matching headpiece, she would flail, dance, and flap her arms in unpredictable bursts of movement. Her sharp, twitchy routine baffled some, amused others, but no one looked away. In 1932, her performance in the cult film Freaks took her name from stage to screen. She leaned into her appearance, never softening it, never apologizing for it. She didn't try to blend in. She turned contrast into spectacle. She made herself unforgettable without uttering a word. Cuckoo wasn't just part of sideshow culture, she embodied it. Her act wasn't about explanation. It was raw, strange, and entirely hers. And when she danced, the world couldn't decide whether to stare or blink. Now, guys, it's time to talk about the legend. Number 4. The Invulnerable Man. Imagine a man standing still while swords and iron rods pass directly through his torso. No blood, no screams, no visible wound. That was Mirren Dejo. Born in 1912, he didn't claim to be an illusionist or magician. What he did was real, and doctors saw it happen firsthand. X-rays confirmed it. The objects went in clean and came out the other side. No tricks, no sleight of hand. By the 1940s, Dejo was a global sensation, traveling through Europe to demonstrate feats that rewrote everything people thought was humanly possible. Scientists were baffled. Was it pain resistance? A rare mutation? Pure mind control? To this day, no one has a definitive answer. He called it a spiritual mission, not a stunt. But regardless of belief, one thing's certain. Dejo made the impossible visible. He didn't aim to impress, he aimed to awaken. And decades later, his legacy still unsettles the border between miracle and biology. Number 3. Ethel Granger. Ethel was born in 1905 and holds the record for the smallest documented waist ever recorded, just 13 inches. That wasn't her idea. It was her husband William's obsession with Victorian beauty standards that started it. He encouraged her to wear brutally tight corsets, even during sleep. Over time, her body surrendered. But the transformation didn't end there. William introduced facial piercings and other body modifications, and Ethel went along. Her appearance evolved into something almost surreal. Tiny waistlines, dramatic dresses, and bold facial adornments. In the 1920s and 30s, she stood out in every crowd. Though she rarely spoke about her choices, Ethel became a quiet icon in the body modification world. Her story taps into bigger questions: autonomy, obsession, and the cost of beauty. What began as a husband's passion turned Ethel into a walking contradiction. Admired, questioned, and mythologized. Whether praised or pitied, one thing's certain: no one ever forgot the shape she carved into history. Number 2. The Owl Head. Martin Joe Laurel, aka the Human Owl, was born in Nuremberg, Germany in May 1885, with a spinal condition so severe it allowed him to rotate his head completely backwards. When he turned, his spine contorted into a dramatic question mark shape. In 1921, Laurel immigrated to the United States and became a fixture in sideshows, performing with Ripley's Believe It or Not, Ringling Brothers, and Barnum. The act was more than a visual shock. Turning his head restricted breathing and made swallowing difficult, yet he managed to train dogs for acrobatic routines and incorporate them into his shows. He appeared regularly in Ripley's museums throughout the 1930s and beyond. Despite the physical toll, he performed for decades. He died of a heart attack at age 70 and was cremated, his body as mysterious in death as it was in life. His act still stands as one of the most visually jarring routines ever seen in circus history. Number 1. Isaac W. Sprag. Professionally known as the Thin Man, the Skeleton Man, or the Living Skeleton, Isaac W. Sprag was born in 1841 in Massachusetts. His condition began at age 12, following intense cramps after swimming. Though he maintained a healthy appetite, his weight dropped rapidly and never returned. In his 20s, after losing both parents and being unable to work labor jobs, Sprag joined the circus in 1865 and soon after joined Barnum's American Museum. Long before Thin Man and Fat Lady pairings became standard, Sprag stepped away, married Tamar Moore, and had 3 sons. Though born free and never forced into the business, his health and poverty gave him few choices. Beset by gambling debts and declining health, he returned to circus life. Diagnosed with progressive muscular dystrophy, he ultimately sold his body to Harvard Medical School for $1,000. He died weighing just 43 pounds. Folklore claims he lost a $250 death bet. The New York Times recorded his passing in 1887. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you soon.